Welcome to the Roundtable Consult. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Williams, and I'm joined as always by my wonderful and always evolving co-host, Attorney Sonia Madison. Sonia, how you doing?
It's a nice day. It's been a rainy week, but it's a nice day so far today. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fantastic. It's supposed to get pretty warm up here too, as a matter of fact. So I'm looking for 92-degree weather today. Looking forward to that. I'm like, that's my kind of weather right there.
93. You are a Southern guy.
87, 87 to about 95. I'm good. Narrow range. But I don't like how we did get quite a bit of rain up here this week, and probably some of it was much needed, but you get tired of it after a while. You're just like, okay, enough already. I need some sunshine in my life. But more sunshine than just Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. Central Standard.
Well, there's been a lot of flip-flopping this week. We've got some Republicans flipping on whether or not abortion should be at inception. Mike Pence has come out and said,
I know, 15 weeks on national. Wow, that floored me. I was like, wow, is he actually really saying this? And boy, I tell you, people say anything to get a vote. That's what it shows down to.
That's definitely Donald Trump's motto: say anything to get a vote.
Unbelievable. But yeah, I do think that there is some reasonableness to that. And Nikki Haley, I think, articulated it well in her town hall meeting. She was saying, there are some things that we can't, that there is a role for federal intervention here. And that there are some things that we can all pretty much agree on. And although I don't know if Mike Pence still got his notion about whether or not it should be criminalized and whether women should go to jail for having an abortion. I don't know if he's changing it.
He said that he didn't think they should, although it sounds like he still expects some type of penalty, but it didn't seem like that he felt like the penalty should be incarceration, which again, I mean, I don't know. He's so interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's good that they're moderating a little bit.
Look at you, that they're moderating.
A little bit.
Not too extreme right now. Now they're back to the moderate side of things.
Yes, indeed. But we didn't get a chance to meet last week because Juneteenth. How did you celebrate Juneteenth?
Well, I mean, I just enjoyed a nice relaxation. I mean, I did work,
Not working.
I didn't work as much, so I did rest a little bit. Also, I did have some leftover barbecue that I enjoyed. But it's interesting. I had a conversation with one of my physical therapists, and he was like, and a lot of people have said this, even though I mean they're all made up holidays. But he's like, I mean, Juneteenth is just so interesting. Like, I don't know what we're supposed to do with it. And I had to remind him, well, since our country's trying to eradicate the teaching of history, sometimes we need these holidays in place so that we're forced to explain to children the history behind the holiday and why it's significant to a group of people, even if it is not significant to you personally.
Yeah, I don't know. I was torn a little bit by, realizing that it's a national holiday, and there was still a lot of PWIs that were wide open and moving in full force and carrying on. They'd be like, "Oh, it's a holiday today." I'm like, "Really? Come on."
It's so interesting. You think they'd be excited for a day off? They complain we should have 4-day weeks,
right?
But on this
I'm not taking that day off.
I know, right? I'm in the work this day.
That's your holiday. Well, okay, I'll take it. But I thought about that. Like that is an Independence Day because, and the whole story behind it is that we're not free until we're all free, and how this country celebrates an Independence Day that still resulted in a huge portion of its citizens. And I guess at that time, we weren't citizens, but we still celebrate that Independence Day at a time when very many of us were still not independent. We weren't free. And so it's a new Independence Day for us. And I'm glad that some people actually do celebrate it. A lot of activities have gone on across the country. I actually went to Louisville for that weekend for the Funk Fest and enjoyed that weekend. I guess I enjoyed it. Fantasia was fantastic. I will say that.
Oh, she's wonderful. Love her in concert.
Yeah, she was fantastic. And I think Jagged Edge did well too, but they had Genuine, and then Cameo was there as well. Cameo, Need to Let It Go. I think he needs to let it go. It really does. It was not impressive. It was a little sad. It was almost kind of how I saw BB King shortly before he died in concert, and his mind was so far gone, he forgot, that he had done certain songs in the set already, and he was starting the set over again. And this little kid on the stage was like, "You already did that one." He was like, "What you say? You already did that one." And kept trying to come over to him because he couldn't hear her. And then she wound up saying it loud. "Yeah, we all know you already did that one, but okay, the thrill was gone a long time ago."
Play it again.
And you can see his musicians like, really, here we go, because you knew that, if they didn't go along with what it was, they were going to catch it from him, just the looks on their face. And so at some point, this past their prime, and their expiration date has passed, and I think you need to learn how to let it go when your expiration date has passed. And I guess that's what they're saying now about this 2024 election coming up. We've got candidates who are past their expiration dates,
including our current president, which I do not agree with, but nonetheless included. I'm sure people are including that, including Biden, Trump, anyone else.
You don't think he's past an expiration date? You don't think he's too old to be running?
I don't look at, and I know a lot of people were using this to justify Trump. I don't see the president as someone that has to pretty much wear all the hats. I see the president as someone who needs to be around people, or needs to have a cabinet of people that are smart, advisory on this specific industry or specialty that you're assigning them or appointing them to be on. To me, any decision that's made, I don't care if it was to kill Osama bin Laden, I don't care if it's the immigration policy that came up to the Supreme Court, it's made through a team of advisors. And the president then just picks which one he feels best aligns with his policy. And so from that standpoint, I mean, I don't think he's on his deathbed, so I think he's still able to decide among his advisors. I still think he's capable of picking smart advisors, and I still think he's able to decide based on the information or solutions from his advisors which one he wants to go with. But with that being said, now I think it's Diana Feinberg or
Feinstein.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I hate to say it, but it might be time.
Past time.
It's one thing that you can at least recognize everyone's names, and it's general knowledge of what the thing is. It's another when you don't know their names and you're completely reliant on them to not only remind them who you are, but also to make sure you're in that session to cast a vote. So that might be a little bit more of a slippery slope.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you some recent developments that's been going on now is in Russia. I don't know if you're aware now that these Wagner forces that were really the vicious militia group that have been working with Russia for a lot of times since the beginning of the war, I think, and they have been some of the ones that have led some of the most aggressive attacks in Ukraine. And the leader of that group has now determined that they had been led into that war under false pretenses, and now has turned his attention toward Putin or toward Russian forces. And so now there's this insurgence that's going on amongst even Russian forces, where this guy, the leader of that Wagner group, was a close ally of President Putin for many years, and now he's turned on him. And is now has captured some Russian cities and is advancing even closer toward Moscow. And I think he really wants to have a conversation, and at least a conversation with the head of the military, the Russian forces. And so it's quite interesting how that was a turn of events there, and what will come of it. But I guess I was just thinking that, how sometimes the leaders can wind up with egg on their face, and can not necessarily just because of their age, but also because of some of their decisions that they're making, those decisions that come back and haunt. And I think most ominous amongst this was how easy it is for those persons within military ranks to usurp authority and then basically establish a coup. And that happens in Russia, right? It's happening in Russia right now, but it could easily happen here in the United States, because there's many people who believe so strongly and so passionately about certain things that a lot of the people who were convicted in January 6th were ex-military police officers and people who are supposed to believe in the rule of law, who obviously now turned and said, hey, now, this is what I believe, this is my conviction, this is wrong. And so they turn around and exert forces against an established government. And I think that's a slippery slope to me. But and I think we're pretty vulnerable for that right now, because you see people in all ranks of the military, of the justice system, of the IRS now with Hunter Biden, the whistleblowers, everybody's got their own opinions. And when their way is not happening, when they're not getting their way, they decide that they'll use that power to retaliate.
Well, the seed of distrust is definitely, it's been spread not only these past couple of elections, but with social media, it's spread like wildfire. So to your point, we continue spreading, with the conspiracy or not, it's enough of a distrust that people do want to some degree, overthrow a government. And speaking of, I want to make sure we get some of these to Supreme Court decisions. So I want to talk about two decisions, but one kind of speaks upon what we're talking about. And this was the decision with the Navajo community. And for a period, there were wars between the Navajo community and the United States after the Mexican American War, because they were fighting over, okay, this should be our land. And the United States is like, no, we just beat the Mexico and we're taking this land from you. But they did ultimately reach a treaty. And why we're in Supreme Court, because depending on who you ask, Brett Kavanaugh, who delivered the opinion, he's saying, hey, the Navajo communities wanted us to develop the pipeline for this water. They're wanting us to make sure that they got access to the water, to give them the water and all this alike. Whereas Gorsuch, who wrote the dissenting opinion and saying, no, they're just asking, hey, which one is ours? You've put our rights to certain water in a trust. How do we get access to the trust? And have you abused the trust? And if so, how are you going to compensate us for abusing this trust? And so, I can't tell you which one they were asking. I didn't listen to the oral arguments and the like, but I do think there is something to be said about the fact that this Navajo community has probably been in litigation for a long time as it relates to their water rights. And so if they're continuing to get this runaround, they may say, okay, fine, you have dishonored our treaty that we entered into back in the 1800s. And so with that, let's go to war.
Yeah, they don't want to do that though.
They don't want to, but water is a basic necessity.
Water is a necessity. It's kind of rough when you start saying people in your own country who, well, I guess the country who you stole it from, are
right. And again, the seed of distrust is there. So who knows who would join the Navajo forces to overthrow the government, right? if that is the target. And this is, I want to say, near the Arizona line. And so so that was one. Then we had another decision dealing with immigration. So we got one plus for the Republicans. That was definitely a conservative decision as it relates to the Navajo communities. And then we got a plus for the Democrats, because the court agreed with Biden in that he could allow certain enforcement, or how he wants to enforce his immigration policy. So the issue here was the administration wanted to prioritize immigrants who are either terrorists or have been arrested or have some type of criminal history for deportation, versus just deportate everyone in a mass, regardless of what their history is, or without even understanding or discovering some of the history. And so Supreme Court said that the Biden administration can, and any administration can, through their administrative agencies, decide what's going to be their priority in terms of how they're going to enforce the law. And so that was a win for Biden.
But it's always been that way.
I know, right?
So you get a couple of gun happy Republicans who say, we got our guys in the Supreme Court right now. Let's see if we can go ahead and it worked for Dobbs' decision. So let's try something else, which has been 1 year now. It's been 1 year, the anniversary that since the Dobbs decision came down and they reversed Roe v. Wade. And so which probably leads us actually into our conversation today, because we want to talk about this whole idea of liberalism and where it comes from, and not necessarily just liberalism as it stands, but this idea of social liberalism, particularly as people celebrate this month as Pride Month, LGBTQ community, LGBTQIA. I think I don't even know what the IA is,
Plus
but
the Q plus, and then that just
Q plus, yeah.
LGBTQ plus.
LGBTQ plus. There we go. This community, they're celebrating Pride Month all over the country. I've seen more rainbows this month than I've seen in a long time. Yeah, exactly. So there are those people, and we've got a guest joining us. He's no stranger to this show, Eric Medej, and but he's always comes in and helps to bring in a little bit more conservative perspective for us. But there's a group of people who really believe that this is not just a political endeavor, but rather it's a spiritual endeavor. And you start seeing how there's a lot of the conversation going on in the world today about this indoctrination piece. And so we're glad to have Eric to come in today and provide a little bit of alternative perspective, because a lot of times, Sonia, you and I, even though we disagree a lot of times, we do agree on a lot of things.
View of me there, we can't articulate it. We've got Eric to help.
Eric, welcome again to the Roundtable Consult.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me, Mark and Sonia. It's always good to be on and talk with you guys and share a different perspective, I guess. Hopefully you're a little easy on me today, Mark.
We're always easy on you, Eric, and our guests. We like to treat our guests kindly. Now what we have in our private conversations,
right?
Eric and I go back and forth.
It's amazing that y'all still friends, huh?
some things get a little brutal sometimes. But
well, I always appreciate our conversations on our private conversations because Mark and I have a unique personality type. We like to banter. It's a weird. I think we've talked about this before on air, but there's just not a lot of people that you can just banter with and disagree with and still be like, all right, man, love you, walk away and and be friends. We never do it, and it never hits a personal level. We don't personally attack one another. We just like to voice our perspective. What's that?
I said spar. Because that's kind of like what it is, because we get some body blows and some body blows go in. It's just like, wow, that was a good one.
Yeah, I mean, there's good moves or good whatever counter measures, but we never take it to a personal level. And I think there's something to be said about, and especially I see so much on social media and just in people when they disagree, it's almost, I mean, within 2 or 3 back and forths, something hits a personal level. And I think it's a shame that happens, and we ought to have platforms where we can disagree and still walk away and be friends and know that we're still good people. This is how we see things from such different perspectives always is a phenomenon to me. But we're all human beings. We're all good people. I mean, and I don't know. I just appreciate those conversations. But
yeah, we can always disagree without demonizing.
There you go. Yep.
Which we unfortunately do a lot. So one of the things earlier this month, I spoke with Eric because I saw a lot of people that were coming out against Target, and particularly Target's support of a LGBTQ clothing line. And Eric, you and I had a lot of conversation about this, and I wanted to bring that conversation to the Roundtable Consult because I thought it was important to be able to share both of the perspectives about it. I'm not sure that I remember the exact details of what happened but there was Target hired this buyer or designer who was going to put in their stores various LGBTQ apparel, and they had it prominently displayed also within the store itself. And so there was an outcry from a lot of conservatives who said, well, we don't want our children exposed to this and walk into Target and see all this LGBTQ wear. And they're again trying to force their presence and force their ideologies down our throat. And so we're going to go and boycott, and or we're going to voice our opinion and exert some of our consumer influence on Target. And I guess to some extent it sort of worked, because they sort of backed out a little bit. Is that your recollection of everything, Eric?
Yeah, I do want to point out I don't think we're missing one key element of that. I don't think that if you will, the conservative people, and I'm not coming as a spokesperson. All I can do is speak from my perspective and what I'm hearing. I definitely do not represent the culmination of a conservative view. But one key ingredient that you didn't mention was that this designer was a Satanist. Okay, so it wasn't that they were protesting LGBTQ wear. I mean, if you look at a lot of the stuff, I mean, rainbows and pride and stuff, I don't think, if that's all it was, some neutral clothing manufacturer puts out some, for Pride Month, some innocent paraphernalia that showed support for the movement. I don't think that would have gotten at such backlash as this designer being a Satanist. And I think that's more of the trigger that happened in that situation.
I don't know that that's the that was not that might have been your focus. But I've heard a lot of the backlash was really about the LGBTQ period. And it was just even those that were a bunch of rainbows and other stuff, even if we go online and look at some of the clothing that was on in their displays, things talking about lesbian and proud, or we are family with rainbow, and all these other things like that. Even those type of things were met with opposition by a lot of conservatives. That's what I say. Is it gay in here, or is it just me? That some of those type of clothing is what Target had an open display. Excuse me. They had an open display, and that's what a lot of people had opposition to. This because they were saying, why would you have LGBT pride clothes even in children's clothing?
Yeah, I'm not saying that was not a main factor. That definitely is also a factor in that, and why that is targeted. And I guess I think the other thing that you talked about is agenda. So I'm going to kind of what's this agenda? So why are they targeting kids? Okay, now you're talking about another situation. Now we have this agenda, this LGBTQ agenda targeting children. So why do we have this paraphernalia for children? They can't make these decisions. At 7, 8 years old, they are not making a conscious decision as to what they're going to identify as. They're being groomed. And at what point, when we talk about civil rights, do we talk about the rights of these children to not be groomed with certain indoctrinations?
What exactly? So I'll take that same argument here,
Yeah.
Eric, and I will say that they've been indoctrinated all their lives in the United States. They've been indoctrinated to believe that the Holy Family Unit, and you and I believe this, the Holy Family Unit is between a husband and a wife, male and a female, single. And we've indoctrinated, we've grown up with that expectation. But there are a lot of people, there are a lot of children who are growing up right now with the male parents or female parents, and that's their reality, that's their normalcy. And do you expect that homosexual parent group to say, okay, well, let me go ahead and promote this as abnormal as those people who, as those conservatives and as those Christians purported to be? Do they not have rights then as in America? Do they not have as many rights as heterosexual married couples to be able to dress their children however they choose to dress their children? There are people who dress their children as Satanists wear all the time and say certain types of things, but I don't hear any outcry about that. The problem is that it's been targeted because of the LGBTQ community has started saying, hey, we want to be treated as equal citizens in the United States. And there's a sect of people within the US who says, I want you to always be considered deviant in every aspect of American society.
Yeah, I would disagree with that being that agenda as that being either deviant or normal. I think the question is more of projecting that onto a society that doesn't believe that. It's not about, and we're mixing so many times. We're mixing personal rights and personal decisions with what has to be declared normal, if you will, in society. A society that, I mean, what is the definition of normal? The definition of normal is, I mean, there has to be a majority of the people agree with this. And we're talking about a segment of society that 0.5% of the community, we're now going to adopt this as normal because this agenda that is being pushed, and I'm going to propose that this agenda doesn't stop with just homosexuality. We're years past that. We're into transgender agenda right now, and starting to project pedophilia agenda. And I would even propose that we're even teetering on the child sacrificing agenda. I can show you, I saw something the other day, it was just horrifying, a late night sitcom. Guy actually took a child from behind the desk and put him in a fiery furnace on stage. It was horrible. It was just, I can't believe that this type of stuff is even fit for TV. And that, I mean, that's coming after the pedophile agenda. There's agendas right now to normalize pedophilia. So we're going to normalize homosexuality as a society. We're going to normalize pedophilia or transgenderism. Then we're going to normalize pedophilia. And people don't see this agenda coming. And this agenda comes all the way from the top. These people who believe in this, and we mentioned this off air, I just want to point this out. In my opinion, from my perspective, there's two kingdoms that operate on the earth, two agendas, the kingdom of God and the kingdom of darkness. And there are people that push both agendas. I'm not saying one's right and one's wrong. I know which side I stand on. But how do with these societies cannot coexist. But now in America, we want to try to make them coexist. It's a phenomenon to me that money can back and push an agenda to try to make another group, accept these things. And now if we speak out against that and say, no, this is not right. Again, yeah, we're defining what's right. I get that, but we're basing it off of what we believe the creator of humankind had, his intentions were. Go ahead.
There are two things that I would disagree with. Several things that I would disagree with. First of all, I don't know that it's necessary that the progression is one that that is a logical progression. How you describe, you go from homosexuality to transgenderism to pedophilia to child sacrifice.
That's what's happening.
But that's your perception of what the progression is, and that they're interrelated. And so that assumes that homosexuals somehow or another, or engaging in homosexuality predisposes you to child sacrifice, is what you're saying, and to embrace and or to accept people who practice homosexuality or who even go undergo transgender surgery would mean that those people would also engage in child sacrifice or pedophilia. I take issue with that just because there are a lot of people I know that do embrace people who are transgender and homosexual. There are people who I know who are homosexual who would never engage in or support pedophilia. They'll be just as abhorred by it as you are. So to make it seem as if there is like homosexuality is the gateway to child sacrifice is ludicrous, in my opinion. The other thing that I would suggest is that the problem that we have and the distinction between the two of them is that the United States Constitution allows people certain inalienable rights, and the right of autonomy over their own bodies, that's one of them. So if they decide to have transgender surgery, they can do that. They, under the United States Constitution, can decide who they would love there's no restriction that for their pursuit of happiness. And so if the pursuit of happiness involves engaging in a loving relationship with somebody of the same gender as they do, that should not necessarily be barred in the United States, according to the Constitution. In fact, now it's actually a protected group under the, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Sonia, but it is now actually a protected group. So those protected groups should then be afforded certain liberties. Now, there is no protected group under the Constitution for pedophilias or pedophiliacs or those people who practice child sacrifice. There is a sharp line between the two of them. And so to couch your defense and rebuff of LGBTQ movements by attaching it or aligning it with much more maligned organizations and practices, I think it's a little disingenuous.
Yeah, let me make sure to clarify. If I gave the impression that I'm saying that someone who today practices homosexuality is transgender, that they would automatically progress into those things, that's not what I'm saying. It's an agenda put to introduce to society a normalization of these other things. It's not to say that one person's going to start off and go, I'm going to be homosexual, then I'm going to progress to transgenderism, then I'm going to progress to pedophilia. I'm not suggesting that an individual is the natural progression for that individual.
So a proclivity to sin is basically one that predisposes you to the next one. So
no,
it doesn't matter
I didn't say that.
So
I'm not talking on an individual perspective. I'm talking about you know my position that there's let's just say a elite group of people. They declare themselves elite. They're practicing Satanist, child trafficking, child sacrificing individuals. If we were to come out and just and they'd be exposed for that, and it would shock a lot of people who was actually involved in these types of activities. So in order to lighten this load, they have to allow and project this on society in a way that makes it seem like what they're doing in the dark is normal and will be accepted by society. They're not going to just jump from homosexuality to child sacrificing. But these agendas that are controlled by a lot of people, and I'll give you an example. Are you familiar with this credit score for corporations that have to promote this these LGBTQ it's I don't know what you want to call it. So we have this idea that all these corporations are supporting LGBTQ, and for the record, I'm not against an individual who makes that life choice. I love them. I'm not talking about anything bad. I love people, period. I don't care what their position is. I don't care. But if you're a pedophile and you're child sacrificing, I might have a little bit of issue with that. But I mean, if someone makes a choice to be transgender, homosexual, I mean, I have relatives. It's not a personal issue. I'm not speaking against you individually. If you're a person that has made that choice, I love you. I'm not speaking against that. I'm speaking against the spiritual agenda that's being projected on this earth. That's my job as a representative of the kingdom of God, to project that voice. And the Bible declares that as an abomination. So now we think that these things are natural. We think that these things are organic in nature when we see corporations coming behind and showing their support for this agenda. But to the contrary, we have there's a woke rating. There's a corporate equality index is what it's called, a corporate equality index that ranks all of these corporations. And if they don't, here's a headline I saw in the New York Post. The Bud Light now has lost funding because they have their woke rating has decreased because they caved to the economic pressure. So now these people who are funding these campaigns are now hanging the money over these corporations. Say, you're going to promote this. This is our agenda that we want you to promote. Here's your score. If you don't have this score, we're going to pull funding. So now there's manipulation and an agenda from who's pulling the strings. So now we got to follow the money up the chain. And guess who one of the people is who's pulling these strings, Mark?
I'm going to go out of the line. You're going to say it's George Soros.
Amazing. Amazing how George Soros is one of the people who just happens to be funding these things and pulling the.
And so let me ask you the question, what is wrong with that? First of all, what is wrong with wokeness? Because again, if you believe the Constitution then says that each person should be treated equally. And if you are now holding corporations accountable for treating each person equally, we're not talking about pedophilia. So pedophilia and child sacrifice, that's one end of the spectrum. But we're just talking about those persons who want to live their lives in a loving relationship with someone of the same gender, or somebody who wants to change their gender. What is the problem with requiring corporations to live up to the mandate or the creed of the Constitution that all men are created equal? Now I'm going to leave that question out there and hopefully you'll come and answer, but I did also want to address this is because you still make the assumption or make the argument that somehow a predisposition to embracing LGBTQism and transgenderism is a step closer toward child sacrifice and pedophilia. And the reality of it is, if you want to go back and look at your kingdom of darkness versus the kingdom of God, and you talk about what's an abomination before God, then anything that's an abomination before God is then introduces a proclivity to advance to child sacrifice and also to pedophilia. So even a proud look, the Bible says, is an abomination. One who sows discord among the brethren. That's work of the kingdom of darkness. And you got people, the Koch brothers, let's talk about the Koch brothers, who actually will support those abominations, but we don't have an upcry and outrage from people who still support those people, who vote for people who are very prideful and who sow discord among the brethren and who has a lying tongue constantly. But yet we still vote for those people because we're rating sins.
So I'll address those, but I'm just curious because I don't want to have this be a me and you conversation. I want to hear from Sonia because Sonia's got a lot to say, I'm sure by now. Sonia,
I'm surprised she hasn't jumped in yet.
Beat me over the head. Give me some. I want some of Sonia's questions too.
No, we'll give you some time to respond. I do want to clear up some things because I want to make sure we're honest in what we're reporting. Going back to the Target thing, I want to make sure it's clear. Target received a lot of death threats. They had people coming in, knocking down their merchandise. I present this because had it been like a Black Lives Matter protest, everyone would be like, oh, they're looting, oh, they're destroying property. Whereas when it's happened here, it's hey, it's justified, it's a freedom of speech issue. But to me, that's horribly wrong. You shouldn't go into someone's private, quarters and destroy the property. You did reference the designer that has some types of satanic themes, and the designer theme is App Friedland, and this is according to the Associated Press, and again, just to be, I guess, in a little bit of transparency, let's helpful for you. I'll show people what's on that website. So this is the designer's website, and so you can kind of see some of the things that are. If you're watching us live on Facebook, you can see. If you're on audio, please come to our Facebook page and check out what's on the website. And so yeah, there's also some things there that people probably would find problematic. Still doesn't justify, again, destroying property. But nonetheless, you're free to protest as you see fit. So I just wanted to address that as well. One of the things, though, that I always tend when we talk about this, and then Mark will tell you, is I feel like there's so much heat on homosexuality that it, to me, negates the heat that should be on premarital sex. I mean, if you're going to talk about the trajectory of how we get from one end to a pedophilia, then to me, you should start with this notion that premarital sex has been accepted well before anything as it relates to people started hammering out LGBTQ rights. And if you're looking, according to the stopthecampaign.org, which is a stop abuse campaign, which is an organization that helps with childhood traumas, most heterosexuals are the ones that are committing pedophilias. So you look at a Jerry Sandusky, you look at a Jared Fogle, you look at people who have been notorious for pedophilia activities, and those are heterosexuals. So to say, you know, we've got this trajectory where it's from a homosexual or a transgender down to pedophilia and satanic, is again, to me, ignores the role that premarital sex has played. And when you look at cults, even religious cults, what are often they're doing, they're taking young girls and they're fouling them, you know, to older men left, right. And to me, that's not only child abuse, but that to me is the pedophilia that we're talking about, right?
Right.
And so, you know, and that has to do with religious cults that are very much on the front of this is a Christian thing to do, or this is based on biblical. And again, it takes out the homosexual, because we're talking about heterosexual, often males, that are taking 15, 13, 12-year-old girls and turning them into, I guess, their wives. And we look at child trafficking. Again, what makes that so horrendous isn't because of the homosexuals. It's, again, the heterosexual line that comes in our value and our emphasis and our stronghold when it comes to sex. And so to me, if this is really something you're passionate about, I would focus more so on the premarital sex. That to me is what gets people down this rabbit hole of not only focusing on your personal desire for sex, but then negating other people's rights because you're so focused on your personal desire. I mean, child pornography is an issue. And again, to me, it's an issue among heterosexuals more so than homosexuals. And so that to me, what often I get tugged as a Christian is, to me, you're focused on telling a group of people because of what their personal desires are. And quite honestly, when we're talking about Christianity, we're all sinning. So we're all, to me, following personal desires that are outside or completely not aligned with what God has for us, or is our obedience to him. But nonetheless, if we're not encouraging people to remove that propensity to sex, then to me is where the rabbit hole starts happening. Because if you find yourself saying, well, I have a natural propensity to want a woman as a man, then you're going to justify it saying, well, God wouldn't give me this natural propensity unless it was to have complete uncaring sex with every woman I see, so long as I have a natural propensity or attraction to that person.
Those are great points. I will say I 100% agree with what you're saying about starting with the men, the premarital sex. In my opinion, this agenda, call it this agenda from the kingdom of darkness, is to come against men. And Mark, you talked about this destruction of the family. I mean, I see this as an attack on men, and trying to these are the men who are sodomizing these children, the child abuse that's happening. You do say heterosexual men, but I'm gonna tell you, it's not just heterosexual men. It's also in the gay community. Let me read an article. The adoptive gay couple charged with sodomizing their adopted sons, also pimping them out to local men, sending videos of them raping the boys. These guys are under investigation. Have you heard of this? Have you heard of this song? There's a song by the gay choir that says, "We're coming for your children." There's a gay choir on Twitter. I could send you the link later. The gay choir made a video called "We're Coming for Your Children." The gay agenda is real, and we're coming for your children. So these are not just straight heterosexual men who are the problem. These also lead to, and they're all, and a lot of these people that were in the choir have historical records of pedophiles. They have pedophile arrests. So
I think the point that she's making is that it's not just heterosexual men, it's not just homosexual men, but all the focus is being directed toward the homosexual community. And as you've identified them as a target, you said this agenda starts with accepting and forcing us to accept homosexuality and transgenderism. And then the next step in that agenda is to go ahead. It's not that case. It's ubiquitous for that matter. It's the whole pornography industry. It's right. Whether it's heterosexual or homosexual, it's the whole advertising industry where everything is sexualized. Everything is sexualized. But my concern is that the ones who are catching all the brunt of it is that it's the LGBTQ community, and they're catching all the backlash from it. And all they want to do, a lot of the vast majority of them, all they want to do is to be able to enjoy the same rights as an American citizen that you do as a heterosexual male.
You know what I know, I hear what you're saying, and I agree. And here's the problem with what the let's say the LGB community, because now they keep adding to this community. And I do believe and 100% agree that there's a vast majority of these people who do not engage in child abuse. They do not engage in these. They just want these rights that you're talking about. In my opinion, these people need to start distancing themselves from these other agendas within their community. They need to start speaking out against these things.
Why don't the heterosexual community need to do the same thing?
Yes, I 100% agree. Yes.
Okay,
they need to start. They need to also start. And let me just make this one point really quick, because this is where it comes down to, at least for, I'll just speak for me, but I believe that this is the biggest issue. If I were to say from a conservative issue, is we're getting to the point where it's no longer a person's decision individually what they make. Their rights. Yes, we need to protect their rights. I agree with that. But it's getting to the children. And Sonia hit it when we're talking about child abuse. When this is starting to get to the level of children being exposed for being trafficked, whether they're homosexual or heterosexual, we're talking about children. And this is where it's getting for me, where it gets, I don't want to say personal, but this is where I start getting passionate about. When it starts to impact children who can't defend themselves, they can't speak up for their own rights. And yes, the LGBTQ community is taking the big brunt of it, but I would say that that's not even true, because here we're watching the Jeffrey Epstein stuff is coming out, and all the stuff that's been happening and being done on Epstein Island is horrifying. If you're paying attention to any of that, and the people involved in that, they are being named, and they're not homosexual community, but the media doesn't focus on that drama and all the bantering going back and forth with the Christians and the homosexual, the LGBT community. That's what they want us to focus on. They don't want us to focus on this other stuff where it is, like Sonia said, the heterosexual community that are engaging in child abuse and these child trafficking. There's a show coming out, Sound of Freedom. Have you heard of it?
I haven't.
You can get tickets. Sound of Freedom. Jim Caviezel, he was the guy that played Christ in The Passion of Christ. Jim Caviezel is doing a show called The Sound of Freedom. It's all about the child trafficking, underground trafficking industry. It's coming out. Horrifying what's happening. It doesn't focus on the LGBT community. It's just when we're talking about child abuse, this is what's happening. That's, again, why the targeting of children, children's clothing, the targeting of children when it comes to this pedophilia stuff, that's what's getting a lot of people passionate, is when the child abuse is being heightened in these things.
So you're using this term targeting of children, and it sounds so negative when you say targeting, meaning that like they got an agenda to say, okay, we're going to teach all of our children that gay lifestyle is normal. We're going to tell them,
Mark, I'll send you the link to the video, the gay choir. They said
the reality of it is that
is real.
I understand that you're passionate for the children, but what about those children who are growing up in gay with gay parents?
No, they're talking about conversion. Just all you gotta do is listen to the choir from them.
In everything, there's always extremes. So let's not just focus on
convert your children.
Let's not base all of our decisions and our whole discussion on those people who are extremes. So all the LGBTQ is not Satanist. All the LGBT community is not after trying to convert your children or convert your husband or whoever. They're not trying to convert people. The movement itself is trying to say, hey, representation matters. This country was founded because of the fact that we've gained our independence for the fight for representation. And the whole Revolutionary War was based off of lack of representation. And so now we've got a group of people who are saying we're not being adequately represented in this American society. And when we are represented, we're represented as being deviant. Now, we have children ourselves. And what about those children that you're passionate about that are being reared by gay couples? And everything around them, the world that you want to happen has everything around them says that your parents are deviant. Your parents are abnormal. Your parents are disgusting. They are sinners. They're going to burn in hell. So what about the abuse that
That's
creates?
not my message. Don't, that's not my message. Don't
It's not, it may not be the one that you communicate.
I know, I'm
It's-
just making
it's certainly-
clear, that's not my message.
I get it. I get it. I know that you'll never say that, but your actions will communicate that, and it will be received that way. One of the things I love to say is that it is impossible for us to love the sinner the way that Jesus loved them and it be perceived as hate. But what happens now is that so much in the Christian community, the way that we're approaching this LGBTQ community is perceived as hatred. And now you got these children growing up in a family that they perceive that is hated by Christians in this country. There's a problem with that. How do you fix that problem?
Look, I mean, it is a problem, but this movement comes with a lot of baggage, Mark. So we can't just 100% just love this movement while there's child abuse going on. We can't do it.
Again, you're equating the LGBTQ thing with child abuse. It's not always child abuse. And the vast majority of the time, it's not child abuse. We got child abuse going on.
They say, we're coming for your children.
Again,
that's an agenda.
That's an extreme group of people that says that you think that choir represents the whole of the LGBTQ community.
Well, I don't know, but you take some extremist Christian people and say that you're equating that to this whole group of Christians.
I see a whole lot more Christians. Yeah. I see a whole evangelical movement aligning themselves against the LGBTQ. So I'm not just going off of a small group of people.
They're not against the people individually, Mark.
I said they're going against the LGBTQ movement.
They're against the agenda, yes.
Against the movement. And the movement
of social rights, not the movement of a social right, a treatment of equality. It's the grooming of children. Come with me to Florida.
Come with me to Florida. Come with me to Florida, where they're outlawing math books because they have, as a word problem, a gay parent, gay couple. And that's inappropriate for being included in this school because let's come with me to Florida. I think it was Florida, where a teacher is being expelled from school or is under investigation or whatever it is because she showed a Disney movie that said something when the whole point of it was that a character in the movie said he was attracted to somebody, and then they say, well, who is she? And he said, oh, his name is. And that whole piece right there caused a huge uproar to the point where the movie was now removed from the whole school system, removed from libraries. Books are being removed from libraries because they have small insinuations of homosexuality. Tell me that it's not
pedophilia. Did you realize how many Disney cartoons have pedophilia inside?
Let's talk about this one. Let's talk about this one movie. I mean, and I get.
Oh, you want to talk about we don't want to talk about the one extreme choir. Let's talk about this one situation.
We're not talking about. No, I just gave you several situations right now. I'm talking about the laws that are being made and passed in Florida, not by an extreme group, but by a legislative body who basically enjoys the support of their constituents and the elevation of a governor who's promoting that across the country in his presidential bid.
Okay, let's talk about democracy. Go ahead. Let's hear what you have to say about democracy. What's democracy?
I'm not saying about democracy is something different. I'm talking about what we are as a body of believers. I'm saying as a body of believers, what are we doing to alienate those people who we're supposed to be trying to reach for the kingdom of God?
Are we
You'll
talking
never be
about
able to
the
reach
law
them.
in the Constitution, or are we talking about Christianity? Which one are we?
We're talking about. I think we're talking about both of them, though. So I think there has to be a distinction between the two of them. And for me, For
So
me, I get it.
we don't want separation of church and state. We want to have them both together. So we should talk
No,
about them together.
absolutely not. Absolutely. We can talk about them together without them being intertwined legally. Now, my point is this: I can believe something personally as for me and my household, but when I go out to vote, I'm voting according to what the Constitution affords other people to be able to have. Because I've been in that situation where there are certain privileges that I've not been entitled to, that I feel or that my people or my ancestors may not have been entitled to. And I don't want to impose that same type of oppression on another group of people, even the young children. I don't want them feeling like they're underrepresented. I don't want them feeling like they're despised, because that's 48% of teenagers who struggle with their gender orientation have contemplated suicide. You tell me about that's child abuse right there. When you have a society that rejects children because they feel like they might have some what we consider unnatural attractions or affections, and we neglect them, and then they're predisposed to depression and suicidal ideations, is that not child abuse? Why aren't you passionate about that too?
I'd rather tell them the truth so they don't get into that situation, that they were created in God's image and likeness, and they were created with intention to be that male or female individual. If they aren't
when
confused,
they don't,
but we're not allowed to teach that in the schools. We're allowed to teach them that they can have different genders,
Why
but
would
we're
you teach
not
them in the
allowed to
schools?
teach them that they were created by their creator.
You're not supposed to teach that in the schools. You're supposed to teach that in your home. In the schools are bound by the laws of this land. In your home, you're bound by the laws of God.
These children in these homes can't be taught the truth, and that would be the child abuse.
Okay, so who's stopping you from teaching your children at home that homosexuality is a sin before God?
Nothing's stopping me from teaching my children.
Okay,
but I can't teach every child in the whole community.
You're not responsible for every child in the whole community. You are responsible for you and your household, and you're responsible for preaching the good news of Jesus Christ.
Mark, you just told me, isn't it child abuse that all of these 49% of people who are confused about their gender they have thoughts of suicide? Exactly. And I'm telling you, the solution is they need to hear the truth. How do I get the truth to those confused individuals?
You get the truth.
I can't, because it's a law that I can't tell them.
Let me tell you how you get it to them. The way that Jesus told you to get it to them is to go into all the nations preaching the good news, not going into all the nations taking out laws that identify you then as a person of a hate group. This is where I believe that Christianity is going to be considered a hate group within the next 10 or 15 years. It's because they're using the laws to enact oppressive laws against a group of people just because they don't subscribe to your ideology. Jesus never forced anybody to subscribe to his ideology. When Jesus interacted with the sinners, before he told them go and sin no more, he showed them a better way.
He didn't have the authority to enact those ideologies. He wasn't the religious leader or Caesar of that day.
Jesus had all power and authority. What are you talking about, dude?
Well, he had all power and authority. Why didn't he just go take the seat of Rome then?
Because that was not his agenda. And so if it's not his agenda, what makes you think it's yours?
I didn't say it's my agenda, but now you want to say we live in a democracy, but people can't go to Florida and pass the law.
But you do it. And people can pass any law that they want to pass. I get it. But I'm saying that when it is attached to your Christianity, and when you have used underhanded tactics like gerrymandering and other things of that nature in order to advance those laws, then it is perceived as hate directed at a particular group, and you will never be able to reach those people.
Do this stuff that you're talking about, all of these people are Christians. The only people that do this are Christians. Nobody else that disagrees with this movement, all the non-Christians 100% agree with it. Only the Christians disagree with what's going on.
Jesus rebuked those who actually promoted the religion that he was from. And those are the only ones that I really have to speak to, because those people who misrepresent the kingdom of God that I believe that I'm a part of, then those are the ones that I will rebuke and reprove.
So, Sonia, you see our bantering? See how our
Yeah, I was
bantering
gonna
can
say,
go?
well,
So I think I know we see Mark and I could go on and go back and forth. And so your audience just got a good dose of what Mark and I
Oh yeah, let me
banter
jump
about.
in while you
But I
think
got to be mindful of your timing. And so maybe Sonia,
Yeah,
can
I
you
think
wrap up our
I think
banter?
that's probably it.
I just want to jump in just to again make sure we're having some honest conversation. I'm not sure when we say this movement or this agenda, who we're talking about, who has the agenda, who what the agenda is, and the like. But I did want to add, oftentimes, and I hate the comparison of Black and sexual orientation. But obviously, when Black people were seeking their rights, of course, back in the 50s and 60s, particularly, the response was, oh, they're going to come for our women. Oh, they're going to come for our children. I mean, we hear that, we heard that rhetoric over and over as we were protesting for the inhumane treatment that we had. And so I just want to say that to say
that, though. The
Yeah,
Black community didn't say that.
the Black community didn't, but I'm just saying people that were fighting against that agenda of the Black people, or as well as of I'm not just Black people, but anyone who was of the agenda that, hey, everyone should have equal rights regardless of their skin
And you can
color.
rest assured that there probably were some people within the Black community who said, I'm gonna go after their kids and everything. There were probably there was a small sect of people, and it's not the LGBT.
Maybe not, but that didn't make the news. Maybe not. But my point is to say the response was, oh, they're gonna come for our women. Oh, they're going to come for our children, as if that was going to be the pedophile, or that was going to be the rapist, promotion if we let Black people have, their equal rights. And so I say that to say, if that's the argument that are given to the LGBTQ community, again, I'm not going to find that very credible, because we've heard those same sticking points to try to prevent another group from getting civil rights. And I also, of course, wanted to add, when we're looking at cases that were brought to the Supreme Court as it relates to same-sex marriage and the like, they were brought because they were being denied rights. So, when we talk about Obergirl, I think that's the name of it. But in that situation, there were so many people that were not going to get either beneficiaries from a will, or not going to get access to healthcare, or not, those were the things that they were saying, hey, I should have a right to this, but this being my spouse, I'm not getting this right. And so that then becomes the agenda for why I'm going to the court, so that I can get this right. And that's the only thing I can speak of is, okay, if the agenda is, hey, you want to have access to healthcare by virtue of your spouse, or hey, you want to be able to get the beneficiaries of a will, or hey, you want to be able to get whatever other similar rights that someone else getting, then I can only tailor that agenda to that being what you're seeking of. And we do know that a lot of people were getting killed by lynching or bully or harassment or assaults, just by virtue of the fact that they were open about their sexual orientation, or by virtue of the fact that they were open about their desire to dress of the opposite sex, or to be something different than what their gender assigned was. And so if we know that, and if we hear people say, hey, I'm doing this so that my son is not continuing to get beat up in school, or because my niece hung herself and I don't want other people to feel like they have to subject themselves to suicide, then I can only say then that's that agenda. So I can't leap it all the way to, oh, it's the agenda of trying to have pedophilia be okay, or it's the agenda of trying to kill children, when what we're seeing is people are killing themselves. People are being harassed and bullied and abused by virtue of characteristics that either they can or can't control, or again, that are not hindering on someone else's right.
And I will say it's not only just about rights, but it's also about representation. And you underestimate the value of representation. And I will tell you, just as a Black man growing up, when you don't have adequate representation in certain environments, then you start realizing, well, I don't belong in that environment. And you can, I get your perspective where you say, well, you're trying to indoctrinate my children into this and make my children, you're exposing my children to this. But the reality of it is that children are exposed to this already. And the ones who are not being adequately represented, their family unit is not being adequately represented in the things that are being taught in school. They're in fact, now it's being shunned. Their family unit is being shunned. And if you don't think that that's going to have a negative impact on the psyche of those children growing up, you got another thing coming. Because I'm not saying that you have to personally accept LBG. I personally think homosexuality is a sin in that side of God. It's not something that I would teach my children, but I also would teach my children that those people deserve as much respect, as much love, and as much representation as we do. Do I like to see it on the commercials and on the television? No, but I'm glad that a group of people who have been underrepresented and or misrepresented by society are now getting the type of representation that they want under our system of government, which is supposed to be, we are all created equally.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would comment, I mean, we have a 0.5% of a population getting, like, you talk about representation. I mean, it should be proportionate, but now it's being shoved down. I mean, we have a whole month for a 0.5% of a population.
Trust me, it's not 0.5% of the population. It is way more than that. And it's just,
no, I mean, go look up the stats. That's okay. You can get back to me.
There may be 0.5% of the population who identify as that. But you can rest assured that there is a much higher percentage of people across this country who engage in homosexual activity.
I would hope there would be less than 0.5% that agree with a Marjorie Taylor Greene, but for some reason, you still make it to Congress.
And on that note,
can I bring up one more little quick thing?
Yes, sir.
Sonia said you talked about the things at Target, the people going in and destroying Target. I didn't want to leave that out there to also follow up with, there were, from the transgender community, 3 Target stores that were called in bomb threats by the transgender community for caving to the they had to shut down 3 Target stores in a community because the LGBT community called in bomb threats because they caved to the pressure. So I don't want to leave this impression that the only people who are violent are these evil Christians.
The only people who are violent are people who are living.
Very violent, huh?
Only people who are violent are the people who are living. And we understand that every group has its group of kooks as well. So,
right.
You know.
Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah,
I think that's important to note too. I don't think there should be any bullying on either side.
Correct. Agreed.
So I do think it's important to note that too. And you know, as much as, to me, it's all right if you don't want to drink Bud Light anymore because of that commercial, by all means, don't drink Bud Light anymore because of that commercial. But, and I think we would all agree, but to take it to where you're going to destroy all Bud Light inventory, it's too far.
Yeah, I'll agree. Hey, thank you guys so much for, hope your audience was at least entertained and Mark and I's bantering. I always appreciate being on your guys' show and going back and forth with Dr. Mark, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us, and again, we'll do this again soon. We probably have to do this at least once a quarter.
Right.
Thanks again, Eric. All right.
So we got to see a day in the life of Mark and his friend.
This is what keeps us going on. We'll spend all day texting back and forth like this. It's bad. It'll start out about 7:30 in the morning, end about 11 o'clock at night.
and always at the end, I'm like, so what did we accomplish? Nothing. That we just will continue to affirm on our positions. Right.
Well, you know what? My hope is that, and this is one of the reasons why I used to post things on Facebook, is that there may be some people who are on the fence about how they believe on a certain thing, one way or the other. My point is, and they may not necessarily be able to articulate their feelings about it. If they see something that I post or somebody else posts that resonates with them, maybe it helps to solidify their convictions. And so we will never really probably convince the person who we're arguing with or who we're back and forth debating with, but there are some people who are observers who will find some conviction and strengthen their conviction by something that was said. So it's not all lost.
Well, I mean, and I guess there's another way of looking at two people from opposites and how they interact and whether it's possible that they can be friends.
Yes.
So, you
and I can be friends too. They see that every week.
Family, we're forced friendship. Well, no, it's always a good episode. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it, and hopefully you guys have been commenting, because we definitely want to hear what you guys have to say as it relates to anything that we discussed today. We are here every Saturday, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can always catch us on your favorite podcast platform. Check out some of our old episodes. And you can also catch a repeat of this episode on Star Radio. Until next Saturday, have a good weekend.